Hello, everyone. This is Justin Smythe from NextBigTrade.com. This is the focused watch list for July 19th, 2024. With the market under pressure this past week, inverse ETFs that bet against the stock market were under massive accumulation last week. There was some super large volume that came into multiple ETFs. If you look at the SOXS ETF, that bets against semiconductors. This one had its largest weekly upside volume ever last week. Really blew away some previous volume, especially during the April correction as well. So big time buying pressure coming in, betting against semiconductors at this point. You can see how this is pressed right against the 10-week moving average, but looks set up for breakout here, especially if the market continues to act weak. And if we jump down to the daily, you can see the massive volume here. Did kind of taper off a little bit on Friday, and as I discussed in the newsletter, I'd wait for a pullback in these to set up a better buy point. You could use the gap up on Wednesday as a potential pullback buy point, and perhaps like the low from last or a couple weeks ago as a stop. But looking for a lower risk buy point after a big move last week, you don't really want to buy into so much strength. Wait till it has a pullback and look for a better buy point. SPXS, which bets against the S&P 500, this one had massive volume as well. Jump down to the daily. This one's not quite as extended, obviously. Didn't move up as much as SOXX, but it probably needs to have a little bit of a pullback here. And again, that Wednesday gap looks like an interesting area to take a shot against if it does pull back. SQQQ, which bets against the NASDAQ 100, didn't have quite as big volume as the others, but pretty good volume here, one of the largest weeks of the year. And then on the daily, volume didn't taper off as much here on Friday, but again, I'd still look for a pullback to that gap area for a better buy point. And then finally, UVXY had massive volume betting on the VIX. You can see how this one had pretty big volume during the September or the summer correction, basically last year, and then pretty big volume during the April correction, and then had massive volume last week right up against that 10-week moving average. On the daily, you can see the volume just really 3 days in a row of big time buying. Haven't seen anything like this in quite a while. There was a cluster of volume around the April time frame, but this kind of blows it away as far as 3 consecutive days of big time buying pressure. I'd still look for a pullback though here early next week. So interesting action in these inverse ETFs. Obviously big time, pressure coming into these. They are probably extended over the short term. However, they could provide some good trades if the market does resume into correction here. And we have our first, or maybe perhaps even our biggest correction of the year is possible here. So again, these are meant to trade on a shorter term basis. They can provide some pretty good gains when the market's weak, but you don't want to be holding these things longer term because the market tends to rise over the long term. But for the short term, might have a good entry on a pullback, and then if the market continues lower, obviously would benefit from there.